Hey, what's up guys? Jacob Legacy 4x4 here again, and today we're going to be installing a secondary electrical system onto my 1990 Ford Bronco. This electrical system is going to be comprised of two 12-volt, 100 amp hour AGM batteries, and they're going to be charged from a solar panel that's going to be mounted on the roof of the Bronco. Let's go and get started. Alright, so before we get started, I'll walk you guys through all of the different components we have sitting on the table. Granted, some of them are still in the mail. They haven't arrived yet. Specifically, the two batteries themselves have not arrived yet, but that's okay. We're going to get started on this project without them, and we're just going to design and plan around the dimensions for those batteries that I can pull off of the internet. And we'll leave a little bit of excess for it so to make sure they all fit nice and snugly inside of the truck. So for this, what we're going to be doing is I need to have a secondary electrical system on the Bronco that's going to run that max air fan that's on the roof of the Bronco. It's going to run some secondary electrical lights on the inside of the Bronco in the back camping section of it to kind of make it nice and cozy and comfortable back there. It's also going to run some 110 volt outlets, so we do have an inverter to run those outlets, and it's going to run some USB chargers to charge like cell phones and things like that, as well as have enough capability to charge laptops, camera batteries, run some small appliances, all that kind of stuff, all the things that you need in the back of a camper. So this kind of setup would be very, very common on something like an expedition trailer or on certain RVs that have been converted to having a solar backup system. For my design, I don't want to touch any of the stuff that makes the truck run. So I don't want to have any of this tied to the alternator or to the truck itself in any way, shape, or form. And I'm doing that because I want the whole back end to be completely independent so that I don't ever risk killing the truck or killing the battery or running too high of a load on the alternator or any of that kind of stuff. And just truthfully, I don't think I need it for the purposes of this truck, which is to be like a 2 to 4 day kind of like overland vehicle. I think having enough batteries that are supplemented by a small solar panel is more than adequate to get enough power for the truck for a short duration trip. If I wanted to go do something longer, there are ways where I can expand this. I can have external solar panels that I can drop out onto the ground that could increase my charging capacity and things like that if that's the route I go. In addition to all of the solar stuff, I am also going to include a shore power charger. So I've got two different chargers here, one for the solar, one for the shore power. That way, if I'm at home, like before a trip or anything like that, I can plug the truck into a normal wall outlet, and then I can charge the batteries up to 100% very easily without having to get a trickle charger or something inside the truck and attach it to the battery. So we're going to be doing a solar charger and an independent shore charge power for this truck. That shore power is also going to make it very useful if I am doing a longer trip, but there's breaks in between it where I can go someplace like an RV lot or something like that, and I can then charge the truck on the ground to get the batteries back up to their 100% capacity. Anyways, with all that said, that's the basic idea. So let me show you the different parts that we have, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do on the truck. Alright, so for this system, I'm using mostly Renogy products. You can get these on Amazon. They have really high reviews, but they're a relatively a budget type system. They're not as high end as some of the other stuff that you can get on there, but they're a fraction of the cost of a lot of what you see. And again, they've got really good reviews, and I'm really stoked with the offerings that they have. So the first thing I got was a complete solar starter kit from Renogy. That includes this 100 watt solar panel, which is this big panel back here. It included a solar charger. Now I did opt to upgrade to one of their higher end kits, which has an MPPT solar charger. It was like maybe 40 or 50 more dollars, but this is a better style of system to use a charger. It's a relatively newer technology, but it is better for solar charging than the previous type system. So I went ahead and just upgraded that because I'm doing a new build. I figured I might as well just use the best stuff I can find. That kit also comes with the requisite cables to connect the solar panel to the charger, connect the charger to the battery, and to do a battery monitor. So you have battery monitoring capabilities, you've got the solar charge capabilities, and you've got the solar panel itself with all of the bracketry necessary to mount it onto a vehicle. Now, sticking with the Renogy line, we are going to use a Renogy 2000 watt inverter, which is this here. So this is a 12 volt to 110 volt inverter. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the 12 volt output from the two AGM batteries, and it's going to convert that to 110 volts. And I'm going to use that 110 volts to power most of the things in the back of the truck. That way I can run standard lights, I can run standard outlets, I can run certain small appliances like say a coffee maker, something small that doesn't have too much of a watt draw, in short increments obviously so you don't kill the batteries. For outlets, I'm going to install these little RV style flush mount outlets. I'm going to put this in some of those wood panels. So we've got 4 outlets and 2 USB chargers. I'm going to do 1 on each side of the vehicle so that you have access to a total of 8 110 volt outlets. We got all the associated cables and stuff like that that came with the kit. And then lastly, we have a PowerMax shore charger. So this takes, it's like the reverse of the inverter. This takes 110 volt input power from some kind of a shore, and then it converts it down to 12 volts to charge a 12 volt battery. So this goes the backwards way of an inverter. But this will make it easy to charge the batteries by just plugging the truck in somewhere. And lastly, we got some waterproof fuse boxes. Got a huge battery cutoff switch. I'm going to use this to totally kill the system so that if it's parked and I don't want the solar panel to charge anything, I can use this to just completely kill all power access to the panel. We have our battery monitor here. This is also a Renogy brand battery monitor. This is going to keep a certain status of the batteries. It's going to keep us accurate and make sure that we don't over drain the batteries or risk causing any damage to them. So this is a key critical component to a system. It's also going to give me a live voltage readout when the system is on, which means I'm going to be able to track the batteries and track my consumption as I'm using things in the system, and then I know I can start to prioritize or triage stuff as it goes so that I don't kill the batteries by using, like, say, a coffee maker when I still want to be able to have the lights and my fan running. And lastly, we've got a shore power charger. So this is like you bolt this into the firewall, or this is going to go on the passenger side fender. Yeah, if I can open this, there we go. As you can see, this just has a standard input for an extension cord, so you can literally plug this truck in anywhere you want and then slowly charge those batteries up by using the shore power converter, and then that'll allow me to charge the batteries without having to use trickle chargers or anything complicated like that. And lastly, we do have a circuit breaker that we're going to put on the whole system. This is going to protect the system from any voltage fluctuations, and it's going to be just a circuit breaker instead of being a fuse, so that if something were to go bad, I can just reset the system and then diagnose if I need to diagnose through what caused the voltage surge, but this is going to help protect the entire system. All right, so that's all the parts that we have. The first thing I'm going to do, and I'll do this off camera, but I'm going to install the solar panel itself on top of the truck. So it's already starting to get dark here. I got a late start today. So I want to get the solar panel on top of the truck, truthfully, just so I can clear off the space on the welding table here so that I can do the next thing. Once we get the solar panel on the truck, I'm then going to build a board system out of wood with some steel supports that is going to house both the batteries, and it's also going to house all these electrical components, hopefully in a nice clean way that is very aesthetically pleasing when you look in the back of the truck. Now granted, most of this stuff is going to get covered up by the drawer system and the bed system. You're not going to be able to see most of it, but I am a perfectionist and I want this to look really clean. So we're going to try to make this as clean as I can before building all of the other stuff here in the truck. This wood panel is the exact same type of wood panel I used on the side rails, so it's going to match that, and I'm going to stain it with the exact same stain. So you're going to have like a whole kind of like 3-sided cubby in the back of the truck that's going to look all the same and get a nice cohesive, coherent flow throughout the back end of the truck. So let me get the solar panel installed, and then we will start building our little tray panel thing out of some of the wood. So this is the basic design I have here. I know I didn't record any of it, but it was really just cutting pieces of wood down on the table saw and then screwing them together with some wood screws. So this is our basic design. This is a little different than what I initially intended. Initially, I wanted to have all of this kind of like all tucked up just on an L-shaped panel. I didn't want to have to do this second tier that I have up here, but after measuring inside the Bronco and accounting for the seat, I realized that's not going to work. So initially this panel was going to be back towards the seat, and you were going to be able to see all of these components so that you could easily troubleshoot something if it were to break. Now, the seat leans a pretty decent way back, and I really don't have that much room to work with, and I really don't want to take up any of my cargo bed space. So essentially this is getting built directly on top of the subwoofer enclosure. It's going to get bolted to the floor, but it's going to go directly above the subwoofer enclosure. That way, one, it hides all the subwoofer stuff, and then two, it has access to this. So you have to change a lot of stuff on this more frequently than you have to change stuff on the subwoofers. Once those are set, those are pretty much just always set. So what we have here, this is going to be the seat side, So the flat part will go above the subwoofer enclosure and face towards the seat. There's a spot for the two batteries and their cases to go here on either side of this center divider. On the passenger side, we have our shore power converter. So the shore power is going to come in from the passenger side in order to have a really short run. So it's going to come in from the passenger side, it's going to plug into that converter there. On the other side, we have our solar charger. So the solar charger is going to come in from the driver's side and it's going to plug in there, again, to keep down our overall length of wire runs that we're going to be doing. The two batteries are going to sit in these two compartments here, and then on top of it we've got the inverter. The inverter is the thing that we need the most access to because this is where the fault lights are. It's got a power switch on it, it's got the main battery lugs and all that kind of stuff. So this is the thing that really matters. So this is the most easily accessible. And then you'll be able to reach over the seat and access both of these if needed, if you needed to play with those or whatever. So what I've got here, I could run these up like so, if I wanted to, run them vertically, which is an option, or run them down flat horizontally. I haven't decided yet how I want to run those, but there's enough space either way in that little extra cubby that we've got on the sides. So now what I've got to do is I've got to come through and I'm going to sand this. I'm going to take some 80 grit and then some 220 grit and I'm going to sand all this. I'm going to smooth all these edges over, give them a nice rounded edge to those, and then we're going to stain it the same color that everything else in the truck is stained. That way it has that cohesive, coherent flow throughout the truck. Once that's done, then I can start final installing some of these components and then running the wires to them. We'll do all the stuff that's actually in the truck tomorrow when it's daylight out again, but for now, I'd like to get as much of this ran and wired up as I can tonight because wiring is quiet, so I'll do all of that tonight and get all of those ran, and then I'll just have the battery wires sitting out free waiting for the batteries to show up. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take the sander to this, I'm going to smooth out all these edges, make this look nice and pretty, and then we're going to stain it. Alright, so as you look at it, this is going to face towards the passenger compartment, towards the bench seat. So all of this is going to get covered up by the bench seat, so you're not going to be able to see it. What you'll see from the back of the truck is you'll see this back panel here, which is the same wood as the rest of the side panels inside the truck. So that should give it a nice cohesive kind of appearance. And then when you look over the bench seat, this is what you will see. So you'll see the inverter on top, which is good because that's where you're going to have all of your connections. If I needed to add something or I needed to run something individually, I have the inverter easily accessible, as well as to control the power for the inverter and everything else. On the passenger side over here, you can see this is the shore power charger. So this is a 110 to 12 volt DC charger, and it comes with a regular Anderson style plug on the end of it, and then this plugs into the plug that is on the body of the truck, which I'll show you guys when we get out to the truck in a little bit. So that connects up there, and then if you ever wanted to charge the batteries up to 100%, you would just simply plug them into the side of the truck, or you would plug the truck into a wall outlet, and then you would be able to charge the batteries, which is easy enough. We have two battery boxes here and here. These two battery boxes house the 12 volt, 100 amp hour Renogy AGM batteries that we have that we're going to be using. These boxes are also from Renogy, so these are pretty nicely done. I mean, they're just plastic, molded plastic battery box housings, but it helps to kind of clean this up a little bit, and it helps cover up some of the battery pins themselves. Moving over to this side, down here we have the solar charger, which is obviously not connected to the panel yet because the panel is on the truck, but it is connected to the two batteries. We have, this is the shunt bar, which is for the battery monitor, and then we have our fuse block, which is going to be used to run all of the subsidiary systems in the back of the truck. So overall, not a very complicated system. On the front of it, we do have two distribution blocks, obviously live and ground, or load and ground. So the way I have this wired, I have the two batteries wired in series. So this battery right here connects to the red terminal, so it's red to red on the secondary battery, and then the secondary battery comes down and powers the distribution block. That gives me a total of 200 amp hours of battery power, still maintaining at 12 volt DC. If you'd ran in parallel, it would have been 100 amp hours at 24 volt DC. Okay, so coming down from this, the secondary battery is what is connected to the distribution blocks on the positive and the negative sides. And then we have the chargers are ran to the distribution blocks, each one of them. I did it like that to kind of simplify the wiring that would have to go onto the batteries, because it is more annoying to wire a battery than it is to just wire a distribution block pretty simply. And then from the distribution blocks, the negative side goes to this shunt for the battery monitor because it monitors off of the negative wire. and then the positive side runs over to that circuit breaker and then to the main power switch that we have over here. So what that does is that gives me the ability to completely shut the system off from the inverter, so I can completely turn off the inverter if I need to, supplying no power to any of the secondary systems in the back of the truck, but that allows me to still charge the panels from the solar system or from shore power. So what I can do is I can now take the load of the inverter off, because even if this is in the off position, an inverter still pulls a little bit of a load just to kind of keep the capacitors inside of it running. So this cuts the inverter completely off out of the system and allows me to only do the chargers, which is simple enough. It also will allow me to monitor battery voltage even if I have the system turned off. So that's how I've got all of that wired. So relatively simple, truthfully. There's really not that many components. You didn't have to do a cutoff switch if you didn't want to. That's totally unnecessary. I also have a circuit breaker that is wired from this, and then it's before the cutoff switch. So if something were to ever happen, the circuit breaker would flip first. So if I lose all of my power, I know that the circuit breaker is what flipped. And then coming off of the inverter to run the rest of our panels, we're going to be using this fuse box. So if a fuse blows, I can quickly identify which fuse is blown and swap out a fuse pretty easily. These are just standard automotive style fuses. We'll wire the fuse block once we are inside the truck, because this obviously needs to be in place so I can run the wires for the different systems. But overall, not that complicated of a build, truthfully. I got a couple of the sensors that still need to be wired. I need to wire the battery monitor. I need to wire the, this has a remote for it, and then this has a temperature monitor for it, and then this has a remote for it. So there's a handful of things that still need to be wired, but I'm gonna wire those on the truck once I figure out where I wanna put those different subsystems. Now, the last thing I need to make for this, which we'll make next after I clean up the shop a little bit because it's a mess in here, I want to do some kind of support underneath this, just because these two batteries are like 100 pounds total between the two of them. So I want to do some kind of metal support underneath of this. So I don't really know what it's going to look like yet, but I need to clear off the table so I can build a support system to go underneath this, just because this is almost a 5-foot run from side to side, and I've got a huge load just sitting in the center of this, and so I am worried about this wood eventually snapping. It can obviously hold it by itself right now, but what I'm worried about is while you're driving, you hit a bump, or if you're off-road or something, if I take a fall or anything like that, there is potential for these batteries, once they're under motion, to snap this wood, and that would be not ideal. So I'm gonna do some kind of undercarried support system, which we'll talk about once I figure out how I wanna design that. Anyways, let me get this off of the table, and I will clean up the shop, and I will catch back up with you guys when we're ready to do that support underneath of this, which is gonna be the next thing we do. Okay, so this is what the crossbar support looks like. As you can see in the center, we have that big T that we made, and then on the ends I did a flat plate. This flat plate is going to tie into the aluminum uprights that are on the enclosure, and then we've got a bottom plate as well. This bottom plate is going to sit on top of the subwoofer enclosure and provide the minimum level of clearance needed to get it above the subwoofers. Then this will get tied into the subwoofer enclosure, as well as getting tied into the ground level of the truck. So with all that done, let's go install this, and let's get this really heavy enclosure into the back of the Bronco. There's the old truck here. Before I show you guys that, this is what the solar panel looks like installed up on the roof there. So pretty low profile, not bad overall. Goes nicely with the roof rack. Added some stickers. This one's starting to peel already, so I need to replace that. This is what our case looks like back here. As you can see, all done up as I described earlier. And then underneath it here, this is that crossbar I was talking about. So I haven't thrown the bolts through it yet, but this is what the crossbar looks like, all set aside there. So it will have 2 bolts that tie it into this aluminum panel here, and then 4 bolts that can tie it into the subwoofer enclosure and then into the frame of the truck itself, so that it's nice and stable. Just hopefully I never have to take apart the subwoofer enclosure, because that would be really annoying. But as you can see, this is going to provide that rigidity that we need underneath of this wood that's going to keep this from ever cracking, which is the whole point of it. So we got that done. Now somehow I'm going to wiggle it up to there and get it over top of the subwoofer enclosure. So let me turn off the camera and get that thing in place. Okay, so after some significant struggle, I did eventually get that box installed. So let me show you guys what our enclosure, if you want to call it an enclosure, let me show you guys what this looks like. So coming in from here, sorry, I need to fix the blanket and everything. But you can see the top of the box sits just below the back of the headrest or back of the seat. So you won't be able to really see much of it from back here, which is nice. For the solar panel, I ran the wires down along this like weather stream here, and then they come into the body just underneath the hardtop back here, squished between the foam back there. So they come in back there and then run to the box. I still need to wire them in. And then that's what it looks like from the back. So as you can see, it kind of clears it up really nicely with the rest of the panels. It all kind of matches. It is obviously a little bit smaller, but it does match really nicely. And you can kind of see in the corner there, I added my 3D printed speaker covers, which cover up those speakers. I've got the crossbar there, which sits above the subwoofers, so that those have the clearance to bounce like they're supposed to. And then this is what it looks like from the back. So as you can see, it's nice and clean. You don't see the bundle of wires, you don't see the batteries, you don't see any of that kind of stuff. It's nice and covered up. All you see is the inverter itself sitting in the center of the truck. So it's kind of dark in here, obviously. So on the passenger side, we have the shore power coming in, and then this is where I was talking about. It comes underneath the hardtop and routes down here and follows along the wood. It's just screwed into the wood there, and then it'll plug into the solar charger right on that side. And then all the rest of it's all nice and hidden. It makes it look pretty clean. I might even do a top cover plate on this, like just a vanity plate. I haven't decided yet. So those might get a little vanity plate cover eventually. And there's a closer look at our speaker covers that we 3D printed with a nice little honeycomb shape just to cover up those speakers in the back. That's it. Now I've got to come through and route out the USB ports or the outlets for the back here. I'm going to do 4 outlets on this side and 4 outlets on the driver's side right here on the back panel so that you have access to it from the rear of the truck. So let me go ahead and route those out. Okay, so back here, I know it's kind of dirty. I did use the Bronco to move, so I used the Bronco to carry a lot of my extra stuff, and then one of my friends drove the Bronco over here while I was moving. But in the back here, you can see we have our wood side panels on the sides of the truck. We have a 4-gang normal 110 volt outlet on each side. So these have 4 individual 110 volt outlets, as well as 2 USB ports. I got one of those on each side of the truck that is kind of like installed into the wood panels there. These also have their own switch on them to control power to and from those outlets, so if I ever wanted to turn it off and isolate something, I could. And then above it, we do have 2 rocker switches on both sides of the truck as well. Again, these mirror on both sides. Those rocker switches are going to be used to control lights and other accessories in the back of the truck, so that with the tailgate down, when you're in like camp mode and you're out at a place and you're trying to use some of the stuff back here, you have switches that can control the different lights, your different exterior features and things like that that are going to get added onto the truck. Now, moving up farther, you can see back here is where we put our inverter, and I'll show you guys a better close-up of all this here in a second. One of these switches is also going to control the fan and give the fan power as well. I haven't ran switch wiring, all that stuff yet. I need to do that. It's going to happen in the future. Let me show you guys the front of the truck though. Alright, so I got to take you guys off because this seat doesn't move, but there's the whole front of the truck, and then back here, it's kind of dark in there, but that is where all of our systems go. So everything is ran behind those side panels and ran down into our system here from the solar panel, and then from our shore power charger right here, which allows us to fully charge the batteries in the truck from the outside. And that's the Bronco. Alright, so I don't know about you guys, but this video to me felt super chaotic. So I made this entire video over the span of about 6 or 7 weeks, and like I said, in the process of making this video, I also moved, had to set up a new shop, had to establish a new house, and had to do a whole bunch of other stuff like that as well. That just really took up some time, and I definitely lost the progress on this project specifically. So I know it was a little wonky. I'm doing this video and I'm going to put it out there. I know it's a little funky, but if you have any questions about the setup, or if you want to know any of the parts I use, or if you need help doing something like this on your own, please leave a comment down below and I will answer as best as I can. For the Bronco, the next thing I'm going to do on the Bronco is going to be some rust repair of those quarter panels, as well as painting it. So I've got some paint over there, it's just not the time to do it yet, but that's going to be the next project on the Bronco, is to get it painted and to repair the rust. And then I've also got new headlights and tail lights for the Bronco as well, so that we can kind of freshen up the look of this truck. And then after that, we got to go through and do some mechanical stuff on it after we get the paint done, before we build out the back of the Bronco. And then otherwise, I got a couple other small projects that I'm going to do that I will record for everybody. So some 3D printing stuff and some laser stuff that you'll see some videos on, as well as I establish things and get things set up in the shop. Thanks for bearing with me on this video. Sorry if it got kind of like all over the place and I kind of skipped some pieces there at the end, but thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked it. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.